Cutting Room in New York. My name is Brad Tolinsky. I'm with Backstory Events. And this evening's program is going to be live streamed on guitarworld.com, where it'll exist forever and ever, so behave yourself, sort of. Future Backstory events include a couple of really great ones. We're going to be interviewing Ringo Starr and David Lynch. Unfortunately, it's going to be out in Los Angeles, so our New York people won't be able to attend, but you will be able to see it on parade.com. But November 5th, here at the Cutting Room, we're going to have an evening with Led Zeppelin, the female Led Zeppelin cover band, with a whole lot of strings. They're going to be performing here with the complete string section, and they're going to be releasing a new EP called The Island of Skyros with Zeppelin songs arranged with strings. I've heard it. It's amazing. So join us for that. But here with us today is one of the true heavy metal legends. You know him from, he's discovered bands like Metallica, Anthrax, Testament, and of course he's the founder of Megaforce Records, which is a great legendary metal record label. Some of the greatest records of all time on it. But here he's with us tonight celebrating the release of his new book, Heavy Tales, the metal, the music, the madness. Let's bring him out, Mr. Jonny Z. There you got your...
Thank you all for coming down. Big time.
And I forgot to mention that after we have our conversation tonight, we're going to be followed by a performance by a great Motörhead cover band called Headmotör. So stick around for that.
They're really good. Check it out. So I want to thank Ray and Rockin' Ray and Metal Joe for coming down and spinning all that great music. I recognize it all, by the way. I heard those songs before.
Rock Soldiers. Yeah. So John, why did you decide to write this book now?
Well, I retired in June of 2018. When I say retired, I mean really retired. I don't do any more business in the music business at all. And I'm sitting in my backyard, into it about 3 days into my retirement. And I went over to Marsha and I said, Marsha, I got to do something. And she said to me, like, what are you going to do, John? I said, I think I'm going to write a book. And she says, well, it's your book. You write it. So I got ready to write this book, but I didn't know what I was going to do because I have a terrible memory. So I found a fella from the military who did research manuals on tools. And if he could research everything you could imagine about a tool, I figured he could put my life together with a timeline. And if he could put the timeline together, I could write the stories in between. So that's what happened in June of 2018. It took 1.3 years to write the book.
Well, you also probably spoke to a lot of your friends. Like, there's a couple of them out here in the audience, guys like Metal Jeff and those guys over there that probably helped you a little bit with some of the memories as well.
Well, I had to call on quite a few people actually to get some of my memories put together. Ed Trunk, who we all know was a big help in the book, and Metal Joe woke me up quite a bit to quite a few things that I didn't remember. He just wanted to make sure I let him know. Amen, brother. Yes. Amen, Joe.
Sorry, Metal Joe. So going back to the the beginning, I mean, I read the book and I was really fascinated. I didn't know half of this stuff, so it was really interesting to me. But you started out on Wall Street and then somehow made it from there to the record business. Can you just tell us a little bit of how you went from that world to this world?
Well, on Wall Street, I was a bad boy, and I got mixed up with the wrong crowd, to be quite honest. And I ended up doing halfway time. And I couldn't really work any jobs that provided any money to my family. And Marsha's father, at that time, was paying about an average of $70 a week on groceries to feed my children. Make sure there was some food in the house, because I was making very little money. And I said that we should we should find a way to make that $70 a week, and we opened up a flea market stand, if that's what you're... We started selling records in the Route 18 indoor market. We had a booth that was about 1/4 the size of this stage, and from that booth grew a booth that was the size of the stage, and Marsha and I started with an investment of $180, $150 I got for a Styx collection of old records, and $30 Marsha lent me. What was kind of crazy, because of all the great customers we had quite a mecca going in about 6 months. We had thousands of dollars of inventory. And I'll let you ask the question.
No, that's okay. You started by selling picture discs. That was the big thing.
That was the big thing, picture discs. And it was really stuff like Pat Benatar, the Kinks. There was this one picture disc that they sold down at Zigzag Records in Brooklyn. I found it was the Sad Wings of Destiny, Judas Priest picture disc. And they were selling it for like $120. And I said, wow, I think I paid $29 for it when I finally found 2 or 3. And what happened was that Sad Wings of Destiny picture disc sold for about $50 to $70, I don't remember. But it gave us a hope that people will buy these picture discs and that we weren't wasting our time. Believe me, Marsha and I sat for almost a whole night, the first night that we opened up the store, and we didn't sell a thing. It was just unbelievable. And then when that person came in and bought the Sad Wings picture disc, someone came in and bought a Pat Benatar, and somebody bought a Father Christmas Kinks, and next thing you know it, we were doing business. And we never, ever made that $70, by the way, to pay for the food on the table. I drove Marsha crazy. We kept on investing it back into metal. What happened was, when Marsha went to buy the first records, she also fell in love with Motörhead's No Sleep Till Hammersmith and the Beer Drinkers album, along with Iron Maiden and Gary Moore and some other great ones. And all of a sudden, everybody started saying, wow, where are you getting these? Our first customer, people here know who she is, was Maria Ferrero. She actually came to my door hearing that I had heavy metal records, and would I show her what I got, she'd like to buy some. And she bought 2 Motörhead records from me, I remember.
Yeah, I mean, back then, like, people can't appreciate it. But, you know, buying a record or finding a heavy metal record, it was difficult to do. You couldn't go up on your computer, or even when you went to your, local music store, they wouldn't carry these records. So you guys were really sort of spreading the news about metal while you were selling these records as well.
There were magazines coming out of Europe, like Krang, Metal Hammer from France, Enfer, and Holland Odd Shock magazine. And they would talk about all this great metal that was happening overseas in Europe. It was unbelievable. And when we got the magazines, we would call up our importer, a fellow who brought the records in from Europe and England, and we would say, how about this? How about that? To the point that when Michael Schenker Live at Budokan came out, I remember, we sold about 150 out of the store in one weekend. Now, who does that kind of numbers? You know, we had a Crazy Eddie's, which was a big record store across the street in East Brunswick, and Crazy Eddie's people would buy their records from us.
Now, the one story in the book that I thought was, interesting and sort of moving is that in the beginning when you were first just trying to scrape, some pennies together at the flea market, trying to sell these records, you at some point became discouraged, and you had what was called your divine intervention.
I sure did have a divine intervention, and I believed that I had a divine intervention. I didn't know that I had it then. I sort of grew into spiritualism and things like that in my later years. But I was really down and really depressed. I felt that everything was going sideways or down and wrong. And I went across to the booth across from where Rock and Roll Heaven was. That was the name of our little shop. It was called L&K Babyland, and I remember I put my head back against the wall, and I just felt the force of failure, and I was just leaning against the wall, and then I got kicked. Now, people may say this is crazy, but there's no reason I ever felt for us to have the success that we had if I didn't feel some kind of divine intervention. That may be my own little thing. I don't know what people think of me when I say this, but basically, everything that happened to me and everything that happened to Marsha that had to do with the business, it all came to us in a very strange way. And I never wanted to be anything more than just a fan of the music. I never wanted to have a record company. I never wanted to be a manager. It's just that I felt I had this pushing and prodding that made me want to do it. And I had no training in how do you answer these questions? How are you a manager? What do you do? And it was basically just a miracle that we knew what to do and knew what the answers were. And we had a lot of friends out there to help us. There's one that Marsha doesn't even know is here tonight, but he walked in a few minutes ago. Jeff Rowland is here tonight, Marsha. Oh, no. Yeah. And Jeff Rowland was a real hero to me in the development of my groups, and I love him very much, and I thank him.
How did Jeff help you?
Jeff was at ICM, and
what is that?
ICM was an agency.
Yeah.
Jeff is an agent. I don't know what he's doing now, but he was a great agent, and he took me by the hand, and he took my bands, and he got them work very creatively. We grew together. He made all the right moves. He made me look like a genius, and this is my feelings towards Jeff Rowland. And there were people like him throughout there. And people don't even know, like Marsha was like my mentor. When I didn't have the answer to any of the questions, she did. And
Marsha, for those of you out there, is your wife.
My partner and my wife, 40 years we're married now. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know what I would have done without her. I mean, how do you come home from a sold-out show of Anvil at East Brunswick only to find your lights turned out because you couldn't pay your electric bill and you just had a big success? People used to say, are you paying your bills on time during all this? I said, absolutely. We just happen to be 6 months in the arrears.
Do you think that you were ultimately successful because you were a fan first?
I was a crazy fan, head over heels about the music. There was no doubt about it. If you came into my store, I had very educated buyers, right, Ray? I had very educated buyers. They knew what they were looking for. They know what sound they wanted to hear, and they trusted me.
Well, you were originally like more of a sort of a Grateful Dead fan. How did you end up sort of embracing underground metal in that whole scene.
Well, you have to understand, I was a huge Grateful Dead fan until the passing of Jerry Garcia. It really hasn't been the same at all for me. I don't care what they try to do, but Jerry Garcia was very, very special, and they worked very well together. But at the same time, one of the greatest shows I ever saw was Cream when they first came to America. And the Cream that's in the reunion that you see later on at Royal Albert Hall and Madison Square Garden is a very little Cream. Just to describe it, that Cream was like seeing Kiss without makeup. You know, Cream were very, very heavy. I remember not being able to hear from how loud they were, and I remember Jack Bruce's bass was so loud, my balls vibrated. It was unbelievable. And I loved Led Zeppelin, and I loved The Who, and I loved the Jeff Beck group. I did like UFO very, very much, and that grew. I mean, once I heard, you know what was funny, Brad?
Yeah.
When I heard Iron Maiden for the first time, I thought their guitar work reminded me, you're gonna laugh, everybody, of like the Allman Brothers. Just the out-and-out guitar playing, that guitar dueling that went on. I said, this is Dickie and Dwayne, but it's metal. And I just loved it very much. And all I could say is I remain a loyal fan like all the other metal fans out there. We're metal fans for now 40 years. You know, some longer. Some people go back to Mahogany Rush and all kinds of stuff, you know, so.
We all remain metal fans, don't we? Come on, let's hear it. So you're working at this store that you created basically out of nothing, and then all of a sudden you receive a cassette tape that sort of changed your life, called No Life Till Leather. Could you tell us a little bit about getting that tape and what impressed you about it?
Well, at first, the story is I wouldn't play the tape in the store. The fella came to me, he said, John, I just got back from the West Coast. You gotta hear this, it really is great. And I said, listen, I don't like to play demos in the store unless I already played them at home and reviewed them. So when I play them in the store, there's something I can believe in and I can say to somebody it's good. But this fella leaned on me and he said, Johnny, you're gonna love this. I know you, and I trusted him because he's been a customer of mine for a long time and I knew what he was liking. So he gave me No Life Till Leather. I popped it into the beat-up cassette player we had in the store with broken speakers. And from the first notes, it was a total meltdown. I felt that this was definitely a very, very special, unique band. The very first thought I had was that this was America's answer to Motörhead. That's what went through my mind, that this was America's answer to Motörhead.
Right.
And then this would be the answer to America's problem of stagnation.
So you heard all of that on this little cassette tape, which, by the way, if you don't know, was a Metallica demo.
It was a Metallica demo, yes.
And it just leapt out of the speakers at you. What was special about it to you?
You know, it hit me like a hammer. Goddamn, you know. I mean, it really exploded. I went to Marsha. You know, remember there were no digital phones. You know, there was no internet. There was no really anything. And I went to Marsha. I said, listen, somehow we got to get involved with this band. Now, we had 12 shows booked already as promoters in the tri-state area. So I said, you know what? Let's see what these guys could do opening up for these shows. Venom, Twisted Sister, the Rods, Vandenberg, you know, things like that.
Yeah.
And they rose to every occasion.
Well, of course, you get this cassette tape and you hear it and you like it, and you do what any normal person would do, which is send $1,500 to a bunch of irresponsible kids across the country to get into a van to drive to New York.
Well, I did. You know? I mean, I figured they trusted me, that they were going to come over here based on my words, they did hear from people like Ron Quintana, who was a big tape trader on the West Coast, and Brian Lew, and just other names that exist on the West Coast, sort of like the West Coast militia. They did hear that I knew what the hell. Hello. They did know. They were told that I knew what the hell I was doing. I mean, it was good that people believed it. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. But I had 12 shows. I invited them over. You know, I called them from a payphone is what I was trying to say. When I heard the tape, I went into the drawer, the cash register drawer, and I pulled out a handful of change because that's how it went. I went outside of the flea market to a payphone where I called the name of a fellow who was on the back of the tape, KJ Dorton. But anyway, the bottom line is that Lars called me and we hit it off, and the rest of it really became history.
I do want to, yes. But I do want to give the people some sense out there. $1,500 was no small amount of money for you to risk on this.
It was my mortgage, it was my food, it was my electric, it was my everything. But I wanted them here.
Yeah.
I wanted them to play for the people in the Northeast. You know, we had brought Anvil over, we had brought Raven over, we had brought Venom over, or we were bringing Venom over. And we just felt that this band, Unleashed on the Northeast, could be a very deadly thing. And we figured that if we liked it so much, being Marsha and myself, and Ray and Joe and the militia, if we all really appreciated the music so much, there's other headbangers out there who are going to love it. And that's what happened. It caught on like fire.
What was your, these guys roll up in the van or whatever vehicle that they have. What was your first impression of James and Lars? And it was at that time Dave Mustaine, right?
Mm.
And Cliff.
Mm-hmm. It was like, oh shit. I mean, they had a real punk attitude. It was a real punk attitude that I really wasn't used to. I was used to partying, but I wasn't used to thrashing all around. These guys really thrashed, and they partied. You know, like, I would go, and my friends would go and get a glass and pour a drink. You know, they would go for the bottle and walk with the bottle. Very big difference. And they had a who cares attitude. I actually thought that maybe I made a mistake in the beginning, but I decided to stick with it and get into their heads and just figured that if you're going to be so creative, you may also have some, you know, chemistry that goes along with it.
You saw the transition where they fired Dave and brought in Kirk Hammett. I think you actually even booked the first show with Kirk Hammett. Is that correct? Yes,
at the show place in Dover, New Jersey. That was it was a fun show. Anthrax opened up, and it was really funny because James came up to me and he gave me a big high five. He was so happy to see that Anthrax was trying to thrash.
Nice.
You know, they were at least in that same ballpark of music that they were in, and they had a brother in the Northeast now.
Did you think that it was a good move for them to bring Kirk in?
Yeah, I think it was a great idea. You know, you had a situation where it's all common knowledge, but Dave was really unpredictable, and you didn't know what you were going to get. The one thing that I say about Dave Mustaine and that I truly admire is as shit-faced as he got. He went on stage and he kicked ass every friggin' night. He went on and kicked ass, but you never knew. You never knew. You bit your nails off, but he went on stage and he played a perfect set, and, you know, God bless Dave Mustaine.
So what was your role in their recording of their first record, Kill 'Em All?
Well, the first thing we wanted to do was give them a proper album. We wanted them in a studio. We wanted them with a producer and an engineer. And we wanted to have a budget that gave us a chance to record a proper record. I think originally it was like 5,000 to 8,000 to 12,000 to 18,000, but whatever it was, that was our goal, to get them in the studio. I missed the rest of the question. What's the...
I was just saying, just wanted you to explain to the people
Oh,
out
the
there
role.
what your role was
The
in
role,
the recording of the first
the role
record.
basically was to, I use the word very strictly, executive producer, to find the money to do the project, to sit and talk to the band and have a creative input as to what they were going to do. There is nothing I did not write a note, I did not write a lyric, I did not do any of that. The band is responsible for their music, but to make sure that it sounded better than No Life Till Leather was a very hard task. They even had a cassette live at the MAB in San Francisco. That was fantastic. I mean, Mustaine blazes on that thing. And I had to beat that with Kill 'Em All, which was a very, very hard task. And the first thing I knew people were going to say to me was, it either sounds better than Kill 'Em All or Kill 'Em All is better. And we managed, I think, to then No Life Till Leather.
You were very important in though helping Kill 'Em All to sound the way that it did, because wasn't the first mix of it, they almost made it sound like a disco record or something?
Well, it wasn't a disco record, but you have to realize that Paul Curcio, I believe, comes from the Carlos Santana School, Journey School, Bill Graham
That
School.
was the original guy that mixed the record, right?
He produced it, and Chris Bubach was the mixer. They had nothing to compare to in America. I went in one night and heard them listening to Van Halen and trying to match up some guitar sounds of Van Halen with Kirk Hammett. It just wasn't right. And James came up to me and he said, "Johnny, man, we got to do something here. They think this record is over." I said, "It can't be over." I was like very nervous about the whole situation. But then I walked into Curcio, had a talk with him, and he said, budget is tight, and I said, well, we'll find it. Let's just go and have James do his chunkas, because that's what he had to do. He had to heavy up the album, and he did. And once he put in those tracks, Bubach, the engineer, was able to put it together the best he can. I still think if there was something to measure, like a Metallica album against another Metallica album, it could have sounded even better. But it was the first one.
You guys were literally inventing a new form of music.
It was a new form of music. It was so new that when I played it to every A&R person in the States that I could get into, they thought I was out of my friggin' mind, man. They didn't get it at all. They hid under the table if they could.
When did it finally seem that everything that you believed in and the band believed in started making ripples out into the real world?
Well, we started with like 50 people in the front for Metallica at a Venom show. And then the next time they played, there was 75. And the next time they played was 100. Now, they were still a little sloppy on stage and trying to find themselves. But by the time we got to Long Island, we did a show at the Rio Theater in Long Island. And I'll tell you something, that show was the most magic Metallica show I ever saw in my life, because it all came together that night, and they were absolutely fantastic. Even better than the Roseland, it was that kind of magical show.
Yeah. So you were still involved with the band on their second record, Ride the Lightning.
Right.
And so what was the difference between that first record and recording the second?
Well, the first, I could just talk about my relationship with the band. You're talking about having a seasoned producer engineer, Fleming Rasmussen, who really knew what he was looking for. And the band really were able to explain to him what they needed, and they got what they wanted to get. But unfortunately for me, I had a lot less to do with Ride the Lightning, because they recorded it in Denmark. And in those days, if you called Denmark, the phone calls were like $20, $30, $40. and you call a band every day, and you're broke, and you find out you have a $2,000 phone bill. And it just wasn't going to happen. So I flew to England to see what was going on. We all met, and when I met them, they were already 195 hours into the album, and I had drum tracks and bass. And I absolutely lost my mind.
Yeah.
And that was the start of the negativity. You know, there was a lot of communication breakdown at that time. They had went from, you know, they basically landed in my door. And it was people like Metal Joe and Ray who took care of them, put them up in the fun house, and gave them a life, you know. But basically, they were dealing with a management company that was broke. You know, so those were times where we basically turned into a adversarial situation where they already were looking to see if the grass could be greener. So if you ask me what my involvement was just to see what I can do to maintain the relationship if there was any saving it.
I mean, looking back at it, I know because you had laid so much on the line personally with them, did you understand, you know, the impulse for them to sort of have to move on?
Yes, I basically felt it. I wasn't happy about it. I was very sad about it. But the reality of it is, you know, you don't own people. You manage people. You work with people. But, you know, they have their right. Do I feel things could have been similar years later? I really do. But it's just the way business is, you know, and I basically took it that way. This was a business decision made on their behalf. It may have hurt me, but it was still yet a business decision that had some credence to it.
On the bright side, you started working with another band, Anthrax, a little band called Anthrax. How did you get to know them?
Well, it was Anthrax and Raven. By the way, Raven had sold more records than Metallica on Megaforce Records. I just want you to know that. Anthrax used to be at all the shows, and they would follow Marsha and I around like, I don't want to say like the plague, but...
They were pests.
They were real pains in our asses. And they would show up at the record store, Rock and Roll Heaven, all the time, and they would bring us demos. They were interesting demos, but they weren't great demos. And then eventually, we talk about being pests, they followed Marsha and I to a International House of Pancakes on one Sunday. We're feeding our family, waiting online to get in with the rest of America, and here they come with their Anthrax license plate, and they're all there. And they say, check this out, Johnny. I think you're going to really like this. I say, well, what's this now? And they go, well, we did a song called Soldiers of Metal, and we got Ross the Boss from Manowar to produce it. And I say, well, that's pretty cool. And I put it on, and not only did I like it, but I liked the other song that they had on the tape, which was, I believe, Howling Furies, you know, which was a great, great song. And I put them in the studio, and that's where we met producer Carl Kennedy from the Rods. And we were supposed to end up in one place, but it was a terrible studio. We had no money, actually, to stay in hotels in the budget for that night. We were trying out a studio. So we slept on the floor of somebody's house in Elmira, New York. Woke up in the morning, ended up in a studio in Ithaca, which became the home of Megaforce Records.
How influenced was Anthrax and some of the other upcoming bands by Metallica, by what Metallica had done?
Well, you have to realize Anthrax, you know, they were coming out of Kiss, too.
Yeah.
You know, there was a lot going on in the Anthrax library of songs that influenced them, I'm sure. really don't know what to say. You know, they just developed into quite a bunch of evil characters and good players. What happened to me was I was in the studio when I remember when Metal Thrashing Mad was finally mixed, and I heard that song. I was so proud of them. They had come so far, and then the whole album stood up. The only song that I was a little weirded out on the album about was I'm 18. You know, but I felt that's cool. Maybe Megaforce will get lucky. We'll have a big hit on the radio. Hey! You know, but it fell on deaf ears anyway, and it was the only thing people did critique. Why did they do that? You know, but Anthrax and I lasted, and Marsha lasted 11 years.
Yeah. Of course, you were very involved in the classic album Spreading the Disease.
Absolutely.
I mean, you know, that's one of the big ones in metal history, right? Spreading the Disease. Tell us a little bit about you working with the band during that period.
Well, all the periods were basically the same. Every album was a growth, and every album had a bigger budget, and every album sold more and more and more. Another friend of mine who's here tonight, I'm very grateful to, Bill Berger. Bill was over at Island Records making sure that we sold records. And it was really funny. The regime before us, I think, sold 69,000 Spreading the Disease. And I said, the band is bigger than that. The band is bigger than that. And when they did Among the Living, I believe they hit like 125,000 units. And with that went Spreading the Disease. And then all the rest of the Anthrax catalog started to move because we got them some dates with Black Sabbath. And then, you know, Jeff was able to get them Iron Maiden and Ozzy and all kinds of great stuff, which really helped them sell a lot of records.
Well, Spreading the Disease was important because Joey Belladonna had come on with the band at that point.
Duh.
And you had sort of helped him become more of an aggressive singer.
Well, Joey and I still joke about when we met each other. Because the first thing that happened was they asked me to teach Joey how to sing a song that I happened to write the lyrics for, which is called Medusa on the Spreading the Disease album. I actually wrote the music and the melody line. And here I am with Joey. And Joey didn't know anything about this kind of music. And the band is playing the dun, 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 dun. And I start singing to him like I'm Steve Perry, you know, with this voice. And Joey was singing back to me, and I was singing to him, and he was singing back to me. And then we went into the next song, and we went into the next song. So my relationship with Joey is very funny because I basically was singing to him the songs. I was the only one in the band who would take, no, I'm not in the band, but the only one involved with the band that would take the time to sit and sing through the whole song with him, you know, because I got it.
Yeah.
And Joey then got it right away, too. Got it right away, too.
Now, there are so many very interesting stories in the book, and I certainly recommend everybody to go out. If you love metal and you love thrash music, you should definitely pick up Jonny's book. It's a fascinating slice of history. But one of the things that makes the book, gives it its, I think, emotional impact is, you know, you were struggling, you were working with these bands, and that was difficult, but you were also dealing with, you know, mental health issues at the same time, too.
I've been dealing with mental health issues for a very long time, and the way I seemed to stay healthy was to not think. And the only way I could not think was to keep on working. Now, those who have the book, when you look at the back of the book, you're going to see a discography. That is the sickest discography I've ever seen because there was only a few people at Megaforce Records in those early days. And sometimes, in some years, we put out 9 classic records. 7 classic albums. You know, just imagine Kill 'Em All for One, Melissa by Merciful Fate, you know, Anthrax, Testament, then came over and Overkill, and then we can't forget. See, one of the things I get upset about is this Godfather of Thrash stuff. I think that's cute and it's nice, you know. Thank you all for that. But the thing is that Ace Frehley was so far from Thrash, you know, and King's X, one of our Marsh's discovery, actually. You know, King's X is one of my proudest accomplishments at Megaforce Records. Also not Thrash. I just wanted to bring that out because that's always never mentioned, you know?
Right. There was a variety of music on Megaforce Records.
Including classical music.
Oh, yeah? So, you know, after the success of Metallica and the success of Anthrax, there was another band you were a little bit slower to warm up to, but became a very important band for your label, which was Testament. It was a very interesting story on how you met with them and heard them play for the first time. Maria Ferraro brought them to you, right?
Maria, definitely. Maria, another great asset and a great part of the company, and very, very dear friend. Maria brought me Testament. It was called The Legacy at the time. And I didn't want to have anything to do with that Metallica sounding band. They just sounded too much like Metallica. And it wasn't until Chuck Billy came and sang on the demo that it started to sound really unique to me. Also, I think I was so crazy and so plagued by the madness that I actually didn't hear it. And I started to really get it, as I said, once Chuck Billy got involved. And when we went to hear them in Oakland at their studio, which unfortunately, as I mentioned in the book, was the same day that the day after the night of Cliff Burton's death. You know, we had that plaguing us, and we were still in shock when we walked into the music building to hear Testament play for us. And as soon as they started playing, it was apparent that this band was definitely meant for Megaforce Records. We have an amazing relationship with that band today, by the way.
Yeah. One of the more interesting sort of side roads I felt for Megaforce and for metal in general was getting back to Anthrax and them incorporating rap into metal, you know, doing I'm the Man. And I was curious, I mean, you know, now you probably, you know, some people might shrug their shoulder at it, but it was such a radical idea. How did you respond to that when you first heard Anthrax messing around with rap?
I thought it was great, yet I was scared to death for them to do it. I felt like they could be making a mistake here. I had made a mistake with another band back in 1983 that cost them, I felt, their career. And I didn't want to see Anthrax make that mistake. The thing that worked for them was that when they did it for the first time live, they did it on the stages of Europe and the UK. And it was received so well, and the press was so crazy over it, that it gave them the confidence to come slamming into the United States with it. Now, people weren't gonna like it, but they had so much confidence when they did it, and they pulled it off so well, and it became a part of the show, that it actually worked. What really became fantastic was that it led to the relationship that we had with Chuck D and Public Enemy.
Yeah.
And when we did the rap marriage to Anthrax with the song Bring the Noise, everything fell perfectly into place with that piece.
What did you think? What do you think of rap and hip hop in general?
I like people like DMX. You know, I got to get familiar with him. I like Public Enemy very much, but I have to be honest with you, I'm more of a metalhead. You know, I'm not a big rap, hip-hop kind of guy, you know. I'm just not. I'm a metal guy.
So, in the 90s,
Yes, sir.
Thrash comes along, and it sort of shakes up everything, you know. It completely wipes out hair metal. I think it had a little less impact on Thrash, but it did have an impact. What did the rise and the success of bands like Nirvana or Soundgarden, what impact did that have on Megaforce?
It had a very big impact on Megaforce. It seemed that we were going back into the dark ages again. And it was also at a time where the sales of the records really started diminishing for that period of time. I could have went with the swing into that kind of genre and tried to sign something in that genre. I did work with a band called Tad from Seattle, and we toured with Soundgarden all over the world in their prime during the Super Unknown, which was an amazing, amazing event. But, I don't know what to say here.
I mean, what was your personal feelings about that music? Because it's a little bit more aligned.
I have to be honest with you. I'm not a big Cobain fan. I admire the fact that Cobain did some great stuff, and I did, however, love Soundgarden. You know, I mean, that's pretty much where my head was at. You know, Mind Funk, right on. Mind Funk was a killer record. That was my answer to that shit.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you this, Mind Funk had such a buzz that Richard Branson called me twice to sign him to Virgin. I think that was Richard on the phone, or somebody sounded just like him. Johnny, you must do this.
So I'm going to ask you a couple more questions, and
All right.
I want to let the audience have a chance to ask you a few things. So guys, get your brains going. But on actually the topic of Mind Funk, you recorded many bands while you were at Megaforce.
Right.
You had successes, and then you had some failures as well.
Absolutely.
I was wondering, was there one band or one or two bands that you thought, this is going to be huge, this band is bulletproof, this is great, but it just never happened for them?
Well, you know, I do like the T.T. Quick Medal of Honor album, but I could see why that had some hard times coming out of the gate. Sweaty Nipples. We had a band, Sweaty Nipples, that were fan-fucking-tastic. Terry Date did the album coming off of Pantera. And, who?
Warren Haynes.
Warren Haynes, Nude Swirl. Blue Cheer. Hey, we did a lot of great stuff. A story about Sweaty Nipples. Sweaty Nipples sold about 3,000 records outside of Oregon, and in the Oregon market sold 10,000 records. So if I could have just gotten...
I take it Sweaty Nipples was from Oregon.
They were from Oregon, but they weren't 10,000 big. It's just that radio played it in Oregon. If they... SOD, God bless SOD. God bless SOD, God bless MOD, right on. We did that one already.
And if people out there that are watching, through live stream haven't heard of any of these bands, you should definitely go back and check some of this out, because a lot of the work really holds up now.
If you haven't heard King's X, I think you're really missing the ball. You know, that's a real special band. But then again, you know, maybe I'm prejudiced, but these were all really special bands, you know? They all were great in their own way. You know, I still listen to Merciful Fate, Melissa. Today, like it's regular play, you know? That song Evil just kills me, you know? And what could I say? You know, I know that some people here want to ask some questions and mention some bands. Or you know, Blue Cheer was a hoot. Bringing Blue Cheer together was a great accomplishment. That album, nobody knows, should have never, ever been completed. But Carl Kennedy literally stood everybody at their instrument and put a prod up their asses and made them play. You know, and they came out with a good Blue Cheer album, by the way. You know, so, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. So I'd like to ask you guys to participate a little bit. And Laura over here is going to have a microphone for you, and we'll let her come around, and you can ask Jonny some questions.
By the way, thanks, Brad.
Oh, here we go. We're live. All right, I'm coming around.
We don't have a light to follow you.
No, but I'm in the back here.
In the dark.
Jonny, can you speak about the influence of the rock capital of Brooklyn, Lemoore?
Lemoore! If there was no Lemoore, there would be no Johnny Z. What can I fucking say about Lemoore, the rock capital of Brooklyn? The first time I went into that place, it stunk of metal. And the last time I was in that place, it stunk of metal. I remember seeing Slayer at Lemoore. Holy shit, was that the scariest night of my life. I just looked for, where the hell is the exit, man, in case the shit burns down? You know, Lemoore, where could you see Twisted Sister and Metallica play together, you know? And the Fountain Casino was really where it happened, not Lemoore. But I think we did play together once at Lemoore, or it was the Fountain, I'm not sure. See that? Who? Okay. No. Ray. Fountain Casino, then there you go. That was a great show, because I remember Dee Snider looking at them on stage going, is this the future of metal? What's this? Good Lord.
Can we take another question? Anybody have a question? Okay, I'm coming over.
Was there a band that got away? A band that you really wanted to sign but got away?
It's gonna, you know, Michael Lago and I developed a really great relationship after the Metallica situation. And Michael came to me with two bands. I think it was him that came to me with either one of them or two of them, but one was Rob Zombie. And I didn't want to work with Rob Zombie because I felt that he worked with Al Jorgensen. And I felt that Ministry was the shiznit at the time. And Ministry did, under our guidance, deliver their biggest selling records. Jesus Built My Hot Rod on Psalm 69 was one of the greatest videos I ever saw, as well as a great album, Psalm 69. And the other band, you're going to say I'm crazy, but I was in a real bad mood when they asked me to manage Pantera. I was in a real bad mood, and I think I was just up to my ass in '92, Lollapalooza and all that kind of stuff. And I just didn't want to take on any more bands. But that would have been fun. I would have enjoyed that.
Yeah.
You know, maybe, maybe not.
Okay.
All right. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. Who is your all-time favorite band to work with?
I'm going to say for 9, Blessed Death, and on Tungsten Records, by the way. But my favorite band for about 9 of the 11 years was Anthrax. We had a very, very special relationship that in time just got a little old, but after 11 years of the same old manager with the same old phrases, by the way, you know, I think they said that was enough, and I said that was enough too, by the way.
I sort of want to know, like, the book title,
Yes,
right? Now you have it, Heavy Tales,
yes,
and then you have the metal,
yes,
the music,
yes,
the madness.
yes.
Did you have a hard time figuring out which order it would come first? The
Metal-
music, or the metal, or the madness?
Metal is always first. Metal is
That
always...
was the answer I was hoping for.
You know, I've been loyal to heavy metal music for a long time, and I still enjoy it today. I think there's nothing like putting on Heaven and Hell. You know what I'm saying? And I for some reason, I've really gotten into the. Don't get mad at me, but I really fell in love with the Dio Sabbath era all over again. I just really, really love it. And I just say it like that because there's a lot of people that are so Ozzy'd out, you know. And I just think there's something to be said about Mob Rules and Heaven and Hell. And I just continue. You know who I'm playing now, just in case you're wondering? I'm playing old Uli Roth records.
Uli John.
I'm playing Uli John Roth. I can't stop playing that stuff. Sky Drive and, you know, whatever, Sky Odyssey or whatever. But that's all I could say. As far as the bands that got past me, only 2. Overkill! Overkill, I love very, very much. Blitz is an amazing guy. I think that they are not as big as they should be. I think that they have to get out and play a little more. I think Jeff Rowland should go back in the business and be their agent so they can make it. Or Phil Ernst. I'll take either what.
Well, this has been so much fun this evening. And again, Heavy Tales, right? The metal, because metal is always first. The music, the madness, Jonny Z. Go out and get it. And I thank everybody for coming and joining us.
One more question.
Oh, got one more question.
Ow! Venom remain my oldest friends in the business today. I still am on the phone with Mantis. He's come a long, long way in playing. I got together with him and Tony Dolan and Abaddon to come together and put together a band called Venom Inc. I have to tell you, I've seen Kronos' Venom, and I've seen Venom Inc., and Venom Inc. is quite superior, I think, in every way. But it's not the original 3, I understand. But Venom go back 30 years. They were the first record I ever put out. Yeah, black metal, man. Well, I didn't put Die Hard Acid Queen. All I put out was a 7-inch. All right, listen.
If any of you guys want to talk with Jonny, he's going to be back there. He's going to be signing books. You guys should go back there and definitely buy one. I mean, it's a great read. It's a riveting read, as
If you
can tell.
haven't.
And we're going to take a bit of a break, and we're going to come back, and we're going to listen to some
Headmotör, by the
music
way.
by
They
Headmotör.
came down here just for you.
Thank you again, Jonny.
Thank you, Bill. Let's take a picture. Look at this. Take it. Got it. One